Good evening, everyone. My name is Sherry Aber, and I am the president of the Reston Association, and I can't thank you enough for being here tonight to show your support for all we're trying to do in Reston. I guess this is the inaugural meeting of the second, but the big one of the Coalition for a Planned Reston, CPR, and I'm not going to think that that means anything in particular, but I just wanted to truly thank you and to know, I want you to know that Reston Association is just as much a supporter of what we're doing here and just as concerned as you are. As you know, we have sent the county 2 letters over the past, since October we sent one, and then again in November. Today I had the privilege of meeting with Kathy Hudgens, and I asked her where we are with the 2 letters. Where are some answers to our questions? We are happy that we do have a new planning commissioner. Is he here tonight?
Yes, he's there.
Mr. Carter, and here he is. We did talk about it a little bit. We did thank her for such a great appointment, and we're excited to be working with our own Restonian Lake Gann kind of guy in my district. Not to say anything about my district, but we got some awesome people in my district. So welcome, and I know you're going to learn a lot about Reston tonight. We talked about, you know, when we were going to have some of those questions addressed, and I have a feeling that we're going to be probably getting a lot from Mr. Carter, although maybe he's seen our letter or not, I'm not sure. But what she did tell me, which I was very happy to hear, is she is planning on hosting several more community sessions after the first of the year. And when I asked her what those community sessions would be about, like how would I explain that to the community, because to tell you there's going to be a community session doesn't really say a whole lot. And what she said was, she wants to respond to our concerns, both what's in our letters and then the concerns they've gotten elsewhere through whether they're emails or phone calls or whatever. She wants to help explain some of the process so we do understand, for those of us that might not understand, not only the zoning process and amendment process, but also the comp plan and how we've gotten to where we are and where we need to go. So I thought that was a positive sign that the county's going to come out and she wants to engage in dialogue. So we will see what that means. What I took from that, and I already see some of the faces like, is that the process isn't going anywhere until after these are done, right? So they're looking for more. And what I said, I feel like the train has slowed down. It feels like a few months ago we were on this beeline, and we were like fighting these time things, and now it feels like that train has slowed down. And you know why that train has slowed down, right? It's because of all you guys. And so you guys deserve a huge round of applause for that, and that's just Reston being Reston. And I'm proud of each and every one of you and all the people that aren't here tonight. And I'm excited to see where we're going to go with this. And I feel like we're in a slightly better place than last time we got together. So that has to do with all of you and certainly the Coalition for Planned Reston. So again, thank you for being here, and welcome to Reston Association's Conference Center.
If you want a chair and you want a really good look at us, there's some right up here, so please feel free. Good evening. My name is Bruce Ramo. I'm a member of Reclaim Reston. Our group was formed to resist the St. John Woods development and has been active since this spring in opposing the proposed zoning amendment to increase density in the planned residential community area of Reston. You know, we are very proud to have joined with the Reston Citizens Association and Reston 2020 in helping our neighbors and friends to understand the impact of the zoning amendment on our community. Together, we formed the Coalition for Planned Reston, or simply CPR, in order to more effectively inform residents and the county of the significant impact that density increase would have on Reston. But more than just focusing on that problem, tonight we're here to discuss the solutions. I thank all of you who have joined us tonight to carry on the community engagement that we so clearly demonstrated in the huge meeting of over 900 concerned folks that packed the South Lakes High School cafeteria on October 23rd. Of course, there were some who expressed a bit of concern that there was a perceived lack of decorum by those attendees. And of course, Restonians, we have a commitment to respectful dialogue with our public servants. But respectful dialogue, of course, is a two-way street. It is more than reading talking points by staff, and it's more than officials deflecting legitimate concerns of the community. This evening, we have come together to further respectful dialogue by discussing the specific recommendations for amending the Reston Master Plan. Now, some of you are well familiar with the Master Plan and how it impacts development in Reston, and others less so. All should understand that the Master Plan as amended is the specific justification used by the county staff to assert that the Reston zoning density must be increased. From that perspective, the die is cast, the process is complete, and the plan as approved is the gospel for development in Reston for the next several years. But we are not speaking about something that was divinely inspired. Without arguing about how the plan was developed or the motivations of some of the participants, we can all agree that the Reston Master Plan, like the plan for Tyson's, is subject to amendment before the next full-blown review and updating required by Virginia law. As you heard, Supervisor Hudgens acknowledged this fact today and in her remarks at the community meeting on October 23rd. And the Reston Association has submitted to the supervisor an outline of areas of the plan that should be amended. Further, to the supervisor's office has expressed to CPR a willingness to work with the newly appointed planning commissioner and the community. So let's take an opportunity this evening to discuss amendments for the Reston Master Plan. Let's talk about amendments that recognize that infrastructure availability must be in sync with development, that affordable housing is not aspirational but required, that roads across a golf course that seemingly emerged miraculously without public knowledge or county explanation must be deleted, that last-minute changes to facilitate density increases for specific developers must be removed, and that in order for Reston to remain a planned community, we require an overall population cap and reasonable limits on density for large multifamily, village centers, and non-transit area development. As my millennial daughters say, this gathering and our earlier meetings with the county are what democracy looks like. The views of community activists and opinion writers in our local press is what democracy looks like. A room full of yellow shirts is what democracy looks like. The willingness of our county officials to work with us, to shape amendments to improve our master plan is what democracy looks like. Coming out on a winter evening to discuss the future of our unique and beautiful community, our planned community, is what democracy looks like. So without further ado, I want to outline our agenda for the evening. First, Terry Maynard of Reston 2020 will review a set of proposed amendments to the Reston Master Plan. Terry is our community guru, our maven of land use knowledge and experience. Next, Dennis Hayes, a former ambassador and the president of Reston Citizens Association, will wrap up and lead us in a community feedback session. Once again, I want to thank all of you for coming out this evening, for sharing your ideas and demonstrating your commitment to the future of Reston. Yes, this is what democracy looks like. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruce. I am not a guru or a maven of anything, but I was the one selected to make this presentation tonight about some of the specifics of the recommendations that we would like to propose in terms of amending the Reston Master Plan. And those changes are driven by part of what Supervisor Hudgens said at the October 23 meeting. And this is a transcription of some of her words. She spoke for about 10 minutes, but basically she says she wants to work with the community on the comprehensive plan, and that she wants to work on all of these issues, and all included housing affordability, which is what she was focused on, but she also mentioned education, school situation, transportation, and open space. What we're not going to do tonight is talk about a moratorium on growth, nor are we going to talk about excluding affordable housing. As Bruce suggested, we really think it's part of what Reston's all about. I thought I would start by at least giving you a little geographic perspective on what we're talking about here. This blue line defines Reston all the way around here. And so when we're talking about Reston, that is Reston. When we're talking about the PRC area and the zoning ordinance that's for proposed amendment, that is all of the yellow area that's on both halves, and there's actually a little bit that crosses in the middle there. This is the historic suburban Reston for the most part, except Reston Town Center. The orangish areas here, they're actually supposed to be striped, I guess, but they look orange on here, are the areas of high density within the Reston PRC, most affected by the proposed zoning ordinance change. And finally, and maybe most importantly, is the area in white, which is defined as the transit station area and is governed by another zoning ordinance called the PRM, or Planned Residential Mixed Use. And by the way, if you didn't get one, they may be out by now with as many people as shown up. There is a, Tammy in the back has some extras, I guess. There is a lexicon as well as a summary of the statements I'm going to make on both sides of one sheet of paper, so something you can take home with you. Okay, so that's kind of the where we're talking about here. I did it again. First thing is that we want to do is reestablish an overall Reston population cap. There actually was one in the 1989 plan, and the number there was 78,000 people, and that they actually had broken that number out to 3 different geographic areas: north of Barron Cameron to what they call the Dulles Highway, and then from the Dulles Highway to the southern boundary. There was only supposed to be, at that point in time, 21,000 to 25,000 people in that middle area, which is now all Reston Town Center, plus the Hidden Creek and the original areas of Lake Ann, part of Reston. And then the south of the Dulles, the Dulles corridor, includes not only south of Sunrise Valley Drive, which is again suburban, but also the area in the transit station areas. At any rate, the total of all those was not to exceed 78,000 people. Right now, as part of the zoning ordinance process, the county says we're set up for 74,000 and change, 74,000 people in the PRC area, that yellow shaded area on the map that just preceded this. But that number doesn't include affordable housing, nor the bonus units that are generated by building affordable housing. And that can add as 40% to the number of units that you're talking about in terms of the population in Reston. The reason for that is the affordable housing ordinance says you will not count affordable housing towards population caps, and the PRC ordinance says you will not count bonus bonus market housing against the population cap. So those are gimmies from the county on those 2 areas. So what in effect would be, instead of the 99,933 people that the zoning ordinance says we could actually end up with something more in the order of 115,000 people in Reston PRC areas. And that doesn't count the TSA areas, which could easily have 100,000 people or more. Okay, so yes, we need to change some things that are in the Reston Master Plan and maybe even some of these other ordinances. So what we are proposing, and this is the way I'm going to approach this on each of these topics, is here's where we are, here's where we would like to go on the right side. So what we're going to propose is to set a Reston-wide population cap of 120,000 people, roughly double the population we have now. It's actually, I believe the census people estimated it at 62,000 in 2015. And that number includes the affordable housing and the bonus market housing. And that number should be on both the land use map as it was in 1989 and in the text of the Reston Master Plan. So I tend to be drifty. Okay, I'll hold this up a little closely. All right. And one thing, I didn't do any fancy words here or phrases or anything like that, but if you have a technical question as they go along and something doesn't make sense to you, wave your hand and I'll try to answer it. Well, I see one hand already. I confused you already.
Yes, my question is this, 120,000 would mean that right now in Reston, we only have 60,000 if it's a doubling, but I'm confused
62.
by the 74,000. How many people are in Reston?
We have 62,000. Well, the question was, how many people do we actually have in Reston when the county is counting 74,000 and I don't know. So I'm sure somebody else has another number. This number that they count is not only the people who are the dwelling units based on the dwelling units, the houses that are actually here, but the houses that have been approved for construction but have not yet been built. And let me give you an example. Spectrum Center has not been built, but it's approved for over 1,400 dwelling units, each of which will produce more than 2 people. So close to 3,000 people will be up there on the east side of Reston Town Center North when they get done. A lot more will be there, but that's the dwelling unit number that goes in there. So that was approved like 3 years ago, and when it was approved, Spectrum said, we may not develop this for years or even decades. So it's a commitment the county has made to allow them to build this under this particular approval. They can go back and get another approval if something changes in the future, but that's where their commitment is now. Another technical, yes. This question.
Sorry, I see the need to set a Reston-wide population cap at 120,000 people, but where is the infrastructure build-out that will support?
The question is, where's the infrastructure to build this out? We'll get to that.
Okay.
The last half of this is all about infrastructure. Yes, sir?
I recall that the last meeting was in the school in Southwest. At the very end of the meeting, somebody, I forget the exact question, but the answer was that the Board of Supervisors isn't even going to reconsider changes to the plan for Reston until the year 2020.
Okay.
And I'm wondering what the question is that true, and what are the intermediate things, what can happen between now and then?
All right. The question is, a statement was made at Supervisor Hudgens' meeting, and I don't remember by who, but it was made, that we can't reconsider amendments to the plan until the 5 years is up from the latest plan approval, which was 2015. So it's 2020. The answer to that is that if the Board of Supervisors approve, early amendments can be done. A little higher.
Yep, go back.
Terry, there's a mic in the box, people want to ask questions, maybe let's.
No, I'm not going to do that. So if we can persuade Supervisor Hutchins to support, and we can get the Board of Supervisors to support a change in the Reston Master, or changes in the Reston Master Plan. We can go, that can happen ahead of time.
But, I mean, what's the mechanism for doing that? Are there scheduled meetings that we can, where
Well,
what kinds of issues are raised that we can put our,
What is the process for doing it? Good question. I'm not sure I have an answer to that. What we're doing, and as you heard from Sherry and her statement early on, we're going to have more of a dialogue with the community about what should be done. And then I presume out of that, some way, if she's agreeable to it, and John Carter's agreeable to it, we'll put together a set of proposals that she's comfortable carrying forward to the Board of Supervisors. And I don't, beyond that, it'll probably have to go through a staff review to make sure, it doesn't violate a law or 20 or so, and it's consistent with what they're planning. Okay, are these technical questions, or, yeah, go ahead.
It's on this chart. What again is the total population currently including affordable and bonus?
Census puts it at 62,000.
Well, it says 74,000 and
That's the county calculation is 74,000, and that includes the approved units.
I understand. And if you add that to the affordable and bonus housing, what is that? I'm trying to compare the two numbers, 120,000 and.
Well, there would be, that's already included in this number. No, I guess the affordable housing is, but I don't know what the commitments are in terms of affordable housing for those things that have not been built. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, or we'll be here all night answering questions. I'll get to you later, folks. Thank you. Okay, so not only do you need an overall cap to put your top boundary on this thing, but you also need to put some boundaries on specific kinds of development that can be built in Reston. And the most important one at this point in time is the high-density multifamily development. This is the stuff that's going to go along the TSA area, the PRM area, which as an overall zoning ordinance, the PRM says you can build to FAR 5. That's a ratio of the development to the ground level. But basically, it means about 180 units per acre. Consistent with the plan, and that's always the catch. And then the board has the option of deciding whether or not it's consistent with the plan. So, here we are. In the past, we've had 3 density levels, and the highest density one was, in the plan, was 60 persons per acre, which is, if you use again that 2 person per acre, 2 person per dwelling unit figure, works out to about 30 dwelling units per acre. The current plan, the one that was approved 2 years ago, has 6 categories that has no cap on high-density multifamily development in the PRC, okay? And that's in addition to what's in the TSAs, and consistent with the plan. And it also applies the county-wide standard to areas not covered by the PRC. So that means all the TSAs are covered. So that leaves it, again, this is subject to the Board of Supervisors' discretion, consistent with the plan. Do we all trust our Board of Supervisors that well? Okay. So what we're proposing, first of all, is to eliminate that 6th category and limit high-density multifamily development to 60 dwelling units per acre. Remembering it's been at 30 dwelling units per acre in the plan. I'll show you some idiosyncrasies there. And then you need to taper down the lower density levels as a result of that. So you just kind of squeeze them all down to a reasonable level. Okay. Here in fact are the various, the zoning as it laid out before. It was 3.8 persons per acre in the 1989 plan for the low density, and it went up to 60 persons per acre, that 30 I showed you on the other side. But then when they got to the zoning ordinance, strangely enough, they added a second sentence. or 5 dwelling units per acre, or 20 dwelling units per acre, or 50, well, 50 dwelling units per acre is 100 people per acre. This is 40 instead of 14, and this actually makes sense, because if you have 3.8 persons per acre and they're basically single-family homes, that's one house on a 1 acre lot. So 4 or 5 quarter-acre lots, fifth acre lots make a lot of sense. And I've highlighted this change that they, theoretically, as we've been told any number of times, the PRC zoning ordinance implements the plan. Well, they went well beyond implementing the plan when they made that amendment. Okay, so what we're proposing is, here's that squeezing of the acreage. Wait a minute. Oh, this is the current plan. Here's what they've got now. And I've just told you how we were proposing to squeeze that down. All right, moving right along. Yo.
When you talk about anything per acre,
Yes.
that includes all acres, including parks, streets.
It includes the parcel, the whole parcel. So that if you, like 5 dwelling units per acre, that's 1/5 of an acre for each house.
Okay, when you talk about a high density area, you come up to some bigger number, much bigger
Yeah.
number. And you're including all the streets and everything else, that means in a particular 4 acres, there could be 4 times that density.
The density is applied only to the parcel. It is not applied to parks and the rest of that stuff that are not part of the parcel.
No, now I've heard what I don't understand the answer because I've heard both ways.
Well,
Jerry, I think he's talking about the 13 persons per acre for the whole of Reston. When you do that.
okay, well, there's 2 different, yeah, you're right. There's 2 different metrics here. There's the number of people in all of Reston, which is 13, maybe up to 16 persons per acre. That's the proposed zoning ordinance amendment. And that includes everything. That includes everything that's in the PRC. That includes all the parklands and the swimming pools and everything else. The dwelling units per acre is about the number of places to live on a particular acreage, or on a particular acre. No. Okay, good. Good technical question. Thank you.
Jerry, I think if you get a big piece of property and you had that many, say you had 100 acres, and you had a number of dwelling units there, that does include roads that are not built at that point.
It would be one parcel. It would be one parcel, yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Just to show you that I'm not feeding you a line, here's the 1989 map of Reston, and here's the current Reston land use map. Down here, I'll start here. Here's the you can't. People in the back read this? The maximum population is 78,000 people. And there's the 3 breakdowns. Here are the 3 categories of low, medium, and high density with the same numbers I've shown you there. And over here, since there is no overall limit or anything like that, here are the categories. If you get it, you can't even, I've looked at the original map and blown it up to a whole lot, and you still can't read this, but that's what it says. So, at any rate, just to show you that what's changed. Oh, the one other thing that's changed, and you might not have noticed, is we've added polo grounds here to the west as part of Reston since the 1989 map. So, and there's a lot of other changes internally, but that's the big stuff. Okay, the other area we need, or one of the other areas where we need to limit density is in the village centers. The current plan doesn't really say anything about this per se, which means it leaves it wide open to interpretation, and attorneys for developers will interpret it the way they choose to interpret it. And so there are no limits really on how much you can increase the density at a village center. Right now, the average change in planned densities as shown down here is a 6-fold increase in residential densities in those areas. And this comes from the chart, and I've got the chart I think on the next page, that was sent out and posted in Reston Now, and I think it was sent to RA. The good thing about the plan as it stands now is they can't just go ahead and build that with a proposal. They have to amend the plan with the involvement of the community to do so. Now, I don't know how many of you are specifically from the Lake Ann area, but if you remember, they went through 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 different efforts to figure out how to redo Lake Ann. There were all sorts of different kinds of groups that met, and finally they did get a plan put together, and the plan amendment's there, and it's in the Reston Master Plan, and it allows for 1,650 dwelling units to be built there, or rebuilt there, as the case may be. There was a big deal, or almost a big deal, 2 or 3 years ago that fell through that would have largely achieved what that plan amendment allowed, but it fell through sort of at the last minute. So it's still out there, and that doesn't need a plan amendment if the developer is comfortable with going ahead with that particular plan. The others don't have this plan amendment, so that's where we are with those. So what we want to do is propose that there be an actual physical limit to the number of dwelling units per acre of 30. This is kind of consistent with a medium density garden walk-up kind of an apartment complex, which is entirely appropriate for a village center, which is supposed to serve the neighborhood, not the entire Reston or Northern Virginia area. And we do like the process in terms of redeveloping or working with the community to get that accomplished. So we would encourage that language to
I
stay.
noticed that Tall Oaks is missing from this list of village centers. Have we lost Tall Oaks as a village center?
Yes, except for it's got a mini convenience center, I guess is the best you could say there at this point in time. Tall Oaks is no longer really a village center. It's a residential center.
The plan looks like one. So are they gonna build?
Is there an actual definition of the boundaries of the village?
Yes, the question is there a definition of the boundaries? And the answer is yes. When we were doing phase 2 in 2014, they actually had maps, the village centers, big boards at the community meetings with the boundaries and what's in the village centers at that point in time. That showed, the townhouses or apartment complexes that were there, and as well as the shopping areas. So, yeah.
It's in the comp plan, they're all mapped out.
Okay, they're in the comp plan too, okay.
I live right next to North Point, and it is a series of shops, and it has some residential apartments behind it.
Right.
And St. John's Wood is
Across the street.
from it. So to compare a strip shop, Lake Ann Center, and Huntersville, there is absolutely nothing community in all of North Point. There's not a community center, nothing is called community. Closest to that community is standing outside a Giant. So, so why is that, how are they calling that a community center?
The plan actually says neighborhood scale, neighborhood serving. It doesn't say community. When you're talking about community, you're talking about Reston. So, the plan as it stands already says neighborhood.
What do they call it? What is their term, village centers? Or what is the category that all these 5 things are in?
They're not in a category. That's the thing. They're just left out there and then say, here's a plan, or here's a process by which you can amend the plan to put anything you want in there. But they kind of describe what they are.
Okay, ambiguous.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, speaking of what people hear, I had heard about the village centers that there was a plan to take down the shops, put up high rises or whatever, medium rises, and then put shops underneath. In other words, so that would really increase the density. Could you clarify if that is accurate?
I'm unaware of any plans at this point in time to do that, except the Lake Ann plan. And that, because you've got a historic district there, you're not going to be tearing down Heron House and putting something else up. It's mostly in the Crescent area, the Fellowship House area around the outside edge of that. John LaVos, is that about right?
About right.
About right, okay. Close enough?
My house is also historic.
Okay, you're welcome. Anything I can do to help, John? Yes?
But if you were to push, get to the 30 DUA and say South Lakes Village Center, does that mean that South Lakes Village Center could be redeveloped so that you would end up having a Safeway under a bunch of apartment buildings?
Oh, absolutely. The question was, does it mean you could have retail underneath apartments or condos or whatever might be a bed?
I'm not seeing the advantage of.
And the answer is yes.
For South Lakes Village Center. I mean, that would ruin South Lakes Village.
Well,
The 30 DUAs.
I can't deal with individual development projects in the plan. You've got to set a,
But, no, you can because, if you say that we as a group approve 30 DUA in the village center, and what that means at the South Lakes Village Center, that you can, where the roads would get congested and you can't build out the roads in that area, and you would put everybody in that area who wants to go to the Safeway in a position where they have to go underground to a parking garage to go to the Safeway, then proposing 30 DUA could be a problem for South Lakes Village Center.
Where is the democratic process for that? I don't recognize.
I'm going to move on.
Seems like Fairfax County is determined most of that, not us.
All right. In the non-TSA areas, which is basically PRC areas, we also, just in general, we want to limit the hotspot to 30 dwelling units per acre, the same as in the village centers. We don't really need high-density development, or even medium-high, as they describe it in the current plan, in the suburban areas. Right now, that's specifically allowed within the rest of the master plan context. The high density, as I've told you, is unlimited, and the medium-high goes up to 50 dwelling units per acre. So our proposal would be to limit that to 30. Under that, the current plan, here's what is, well, actually, St. John's has actually got a proposal that looks forward at 700 and more than 700 units, Fairway 800, so forth. So these are the hot spots as the county has described them, outside the village centers within Reston. Okay? Yes, sir?
This presentation is available to us in some form, other than just tonight.
This presentation, I will be putting it on the Reston 2020 blog, and if anyone else wants to put it on their blog or website, Rescue Reston, Connie, maybe?
This is going to be available by YouTube for later.
Okay, RCA's website, okay. So you have a blog and a website to go to look at the full presentation tomorrow.
And Reston Association is going to put it on YouTube.
Yes, Steve?
I thought St. John's was defined as part of the North Point Village Center, even though it's across the street.
It's identified separately in the map that goes with the,
Yeah,
it's not within the boundaries of the North Point Village
as far
Center.
as the plan is concerned.
Right.
Thank you.
Where's the Four Seasons?
South side, but it's only 11 units, and I can't recall even at this point in time. Oh, maybe we can see it on the next page. We'll see what I've got on the next page. Yeah. Can't see it. At any rate, Four Seasons. It doesn't sound like very much, but anyway, if you may have read this closely in the Reston Now article of a month or so ago, I've just highlighted that the top half are those within the TSA area, including Reston Town Center, and the non-TSA area are these others down below. Okay. Oh, yes, ma'am.
The 30 DUAs that you were
showing in the
Yeah.
plan chart. What is it today?
What is it, what?
You're proposing 30 DUAs for those high.
Yes.
What is it today, the DUAs?
There is no specific limit. That's what I,
Not a limit, just what is it?
oh,
The PRC. What's it called?
oh, geez, I don't know.
Okay. No, that's all right.
I'm trying to go backwards here. Yeah, wait a minute here. Okay. Affordable dwelling units, ADUs, and workforce dwelling units. A lot of controversy about them, especially among trolls on Reston now. The current plan language in our plan basically just mimics the county's, doesn't say anything special about Reston. The county has a basic policy of 12% or better, 12 to 20% ADUs or workforce dwelling units in any new development that's higher density. We have a planning principle that says we'll accommodate all ages and all incomes. As a result, we think we ought to adapt the language that's in the Tyson's plan, which calls for 20% affordable and workforce dwelling units. And maybe not this last part, which says it can be anywhere in Tyson's, because I'm not sure we want it anywhere in Reston. We want it in the TSA areas where people can, the point being, those people can walk to transit or walk to work, one or the other. They don't have to get in the car, buy a car, and get in the car and go to someplace to go to work. So that's the amendment we're going to propose, and it specifically addresses Supervisor Hudgens' concern about affordable housing. I don't know if you're familiar with the ADU and WDU definitions, but basically affordable dwelling units or affordable housing is for people with incomes between 30 and 70% of the area median income, and workforce dwelling units are for 70 to 120% of the median workforce dwelling, median AMI, area median income. The area median income is on 75,000 and change, something like that. And the area being the whole metropolitan Washington area. Yes, Dick?
Barry, I'd like to get back to you with the specifics on that. But the area median income for a family of four in Fairfax County is $107,000, okay? Number two, the percentages that you mentioned are not what's in the ADU or the workforce units. They vary, and we need to get the precise facts out, and I'd be happy to work with you on
Okay. I think those numbers are correct for the high-density multifamily, if I'm correct.
The master plan currently, on around page 23, says that the required ADU number is related to the FAR, with the 20% going up to that. But it starts out at 12%, it goes up to 20% based on the FAR. That's what's in the current master plan, and that's the way the ADU policy is established.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just, for my friends, my name is Kennedy, I'm the housing commissioner for Fairfax County, representing this area.
Yes, sir.
20% ADU, 20% WDU, or 20%?
The percentile is the function of, if you're coming in and proposing 100 units and you're doing 20% ADU, it'd be 20 units. On top of that, you get a 20% bonus.
20% ADU to WDU is 20% ADU.
No, those are just two different categories. It's not an arithmetic statement. It's just the two different categories of small A affordable housing as opposed to large A. It's very, the wording is, the wording is confusing more than anything else. Okay, so that's the part, that's the half of what we propose to do so far in terms of kind of putting, I won't say a cap, a soft cap on the number of people who are in Reston and how many are in each particular part of Reston. Yes, sir.
Are there any particular provisions for convenience centers, which is one of the issues that we're struggling with right now?
Oh, yeah, with the Kennelsworth, Kensington. I'll repeat the question. Is there any specific provisions for convenience centers? There's a one-sentence lead-in paragraph, and then there's one sentence for each of the convenience centers. It says they're basically supposed to stay the way they are. That doesn't mean you can't amend the plan.
That's why we're here.
Okay.
What is a convenience center?
Wherever you find a 7-Eleven, that's a convenience center. Now the question is, what is a convenience center? They're the very small shopping areas that we have kind of spotted throughout Reston in various places. We have one over on Soapstone near my house, which does have a 7-Eleven and Domino's, and used to have a dry cleaners, but that's not there anymore. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe you have it somewhere in your program. What would be helpful for me, if I could see how many acres are in these centers, multiply that by 30, will give me an idea. It's going to be 1,500 people there or 600 people there.
Okay, it's not in the plan. Or not in my presentation, let's put it that way. It's also not in the plan. Okay, probably the most important thing is we look at the infrastructure and trying to keep it in sync with the growth is phasing of the infrastructure with the growth. And just as I said, the convenience centers were rather short-circuited in terms of language, so was the phasing. It's got a 3-sentence paragraph that just basically says phasing is a good thing. Makes no commitments, nothing about how, when, where, why, just what I told you. So once again, we're taking a look at the Tyson's plan, which is hugely more comprehensive than the Reston plan, and it talks about the phasing is essential, for public facilities, you name it, parks, schools, whatever, need to be there at the time of a new development is opened. And early on, you need to get commitments for land and so you can have a place to put these public facilities. I can tell you right now, there are no commitments in the Reston Master Plan for adding new land for public facilities. We're going to put the Reston Communities or Reston Recreation Center up in Town Center North on existing county land. That's it. That's it. Yes, ma'am.
Sounded like you said something that we are using Reston issues as options as a master plan.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
There's no connection to Reston's master plan and Tyson's?
No, there's no connection. There's just, if you go and read Tyson's master plan, it's no more exciting to read than Reston's, but it's much more thorough than Reston's and provides good, solid guidance on almost every aspect of the plan.
One of the connections I saw when I got off the train is really were the lights that were around that scared me. Because I can see them about 2.5 miles away from my
Yeah, can't do anything about the lights. This is Vegas, baby. Okay. All right. One of the problems that Reston has always had, as long.
In case the battery dies.
Okay. One of the problems Reston has always had is that it has been somewhat of a cash cow for the other parts of the county. And we'd like to, when we do get offer money from whatever source for whatever reason, we'd like to see that it stays in Reston to be applied to things that Reston needs and ought to, by county standards, have. So there's very limited commitment in the existing plan. The process for transportation, or specifically for street improvement, is very much like what's in Tyson's. That's the closest we've got to that. And for those of you who remember that we actually ended up creating an additional tax on the people in the station areas to help pay for that. finally, there's absolutely no commitments to schools and parks. So the only place there's any concrete guidance is in the street area. And the Tyson's plan calls, in a slightly different vein, a trust fund for housing, affordable housing. And we need a similar sort of trust fund for public facilities, so that the money that goes into, that developers provide for their housing linked to schools, which is based on a student ratio, a number of students likely to generate, stays in Reston and goes to build a school or improve a school in Reston. So that's basically what we would like to see achieved there.
I understand that there have been $7 million worth of offers that should have come to Reston that have gone unattached limitations to our firm and have been that recommendation to the builders. Is there any way to claw that money back to Reston?
First of all, I'm not aware of it, but secondly of all, I don't think there's any way to claw anything back. So, yes, sir, Steve.
Terry, so how do you deal, your money is fungible. So if a developer comes in and he says, okay, we're gonna put money in this housing trust fund for affordable housing, we'll put money in this trust for the parks and the schools. So that money is tied up, so to speak, and the county will just, whatever they was gonna plan to do, or we were insisting on them planning to do anyway, like the bridge from Soapstone over, we've been waiting for 10 years. Don't just sit on their hands and take it away. So how do you deal with the fungibility issue?
Repeat the question.
Okay. The question is the fungibility of the funds that are generated by proffers. So the money that's I guess already proffered by various developers and we think ought to be spent in Reston is going somewhere else. I don't think we can capture that, but if we created, we'll start at ground zero if the trust fund is established and start building from there. And the money that's already committed, it's committed. We can't do anything about
I
it.
think you have to say something about additionality.
Okay, we'll try that. Yes?
On our proffers, are the proffers here enforceable? Are they legally binding?
Well, they're binding, but they're voluntary. I mean, you don't have to do one, but if you do one, it's binding,
If you do one, you have to meet your commitment.
so far as I know. I am not a lawyer, I just play one on TV, yes. Yeah, Dick?
Terry, in Reston and some other high development areas in Fairfax County, proffers can be expected and required.
Oh, that's correct, because of this
Outside
station.
of some of these high-density areas, like Tyson's and Reston, they can't be required. The state passed a law that
That's right.
governs that process. But
That's
they
correct.
are expected in accordance with the county's
You're right.
administration of these things now.
And he's not a lawyer either, or at least I don't think so.
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions?
Oh, yeah, well, yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Your proffers, isn't that done for stream restoration in Reston? I believe it was about.
That was done by RA, has nothing to do with the
Oh,
county.
no. That was money that was brought into it. It was not Reston money, it was $10 million.
No, there was no, the RA's stream restoration project is the company that's doing it gets credits, restoration credits, and they sell those credits to developers elsewhere, and that's where they get their income. It's not county money, it's not RA money.
No, it's not that, no, it wasn't county. No. Bob Simon worked with somebody who had access to those funds, and those funds were then used to do the stream restoration.
Can't hear what he's saying.
He's saying that the stream restoration had funding from the county, and
No, not from the county. No,
From-
no, from the proffers.
from proffers. No, it did not. It was funded on the basis that they could sell the restoration credits to developers who wanted to destroy somewhere else. And that's where their revenue came from.
That's where it came from.
Okay. Yeah, Doug?
Everybody's blaming the master plan the problem is the master plan isn't being followed. The first place to apply for development was Pulte. The master plan says you have to have a minimum of 3 acres. They said 1.5. The staff report had this huge list of requirements that they didn't meet. So what happened? Supervisor Hudgens overruled everything. She allowed it to go through, and even some of the other Democratic supervisors voted against it, and it still went through because there were enough supervisors voting for it. But if you look at that, there's a page full of requirements they did not meet in that development. It's still going through. There are things like we required 2 places off the street for loading and unloading. Now, part of the reason for that is that you've got trash trucks and other things, but also people moving in need a spot to unload, and they're only going to have one. Now, that means that the moving van is going to be out in the middle of the street unloading. But the point is that in every case, all you have to do is mention workforce.
Doug's point is that the county isn't following the existing Reston Master Plan. And sometimes that's true. I can't change Supervisor Hudgens or the staff's behavior. All we can do is work with the documents, the legal guidance in the case of the plan, the zoning ordinance in terms of the law. And then we can argue with Supervisor Hudgens, or discuss if you prefer, what should be done on particular projects or those kinds of things, or with the Planning Commission, right, John?
Can you press through and get your slides done so we see the whole thing?
You got it.
I think I got it.
Okay. Schools. The school system acknowledges that it does not have a good way to forecast long-term enrollment in schools and therefore decide what its requirements are for new schools or additions to schools or moving boundaries or adding huts or whatever they need to do. And in our plan, again, it's a very short section. It says we need to build a middle and high school near Innovation Center, move boundaries to fill that school, and then 2 elementary schools in Reston, one in Town Center North, for which they already have the property, and one near the U.S. Geological Service over on the south side, which is just about a quarter of a mile from Dogwood Elementary School. But that's basically what they're talking about. Our own calculations, which includes the students that might come out of affordable housing or workforce housing, suggest they need a full middle school and high school in Reston, as well as a 3rd elementary school. But I just told you that. So what we want to do is see a forecast based on all of those elements, and planning for an elementary school and near Wheelie area. That is probably the biggest gap in the network of elementary schools is in Wheelie, in the Isaac Newton Square, or the north side of the Dulles Toll Road. South side, we've got Terracet and others. So, and then the middle school or high school north of Barron Cameron. What is now Barron Cameron Park used to be public schools land for building of a high school, and they turned it over to a park when somebody decided 25 years ago that we weren't going to need another high school. So at any rate, we do need one up there, or will need one up there. Okay, the other thing is they do have, I mentioned the proffer system they have for schools, but it's based on what the cost per student is now. And if you're going to need a school to house these students 10 years from now, you really need to get the proffer based on what that cost is going to be 10 years from now, not today's dollars. So Okay. Park acreage and facilities. This is interesting. The county has a very elaborate set of guidelines for the acreage of parks in an urban area and the facilities that are required across the county for its parks based on population. Most of these are based on population. Basically, the acreage requirement for residents is 1.5 acres for every 1,000 people, and if we're talking about adding 100,000 people, you do the math. And the facilities, it's very elaborate. It goes from the biggest ball field you might imagine, soccer, football, whatever, down to tot lots and those kinds of things, picnic areas, and everything in between it. Even pickleball, RA, where are you? Okay, so they've got a complete list of the types of facilities that are supposed to be in particular areas based on their population. What we've got is a commitment to a capacity equal to 12 ball fields for the extra 90,000 people in the station areas and no added acreage whatsoever. And worse yet, it calls on the new residents to use RA's facilities. The full suite of amenities that exist. Well, that does two things. First of all, we're paying for those facilities as Reston, our SRA members, and secondly, every person added is another, just means it gets that more crowded, whatever it is, whether it's a tennis court or a trail or whatever. By my calculation, and I will attest that this is not exactly right, probably, but we have a 150-acre shortfall in park acreage commitment based on the urban parks guidelines, and something on the order of 60 ball fields, forget about the other tot lots and little stuff, shortfall on terms of facilities. So the Fairfax County Park Authority made absolutely no commitment to this community in terms of providing adequate park and open space. And I can remember fighting those battles as a member of the Reston Task Force, and they just were not listening to us. So our proposal is they meet their guidelines as we grow, and they not only be built, but they be maintained as public parks. This is part of their responsibility as the Public Parks Authority. And ours should not. If we want to incorporate some of those new dwelling units into, or developments into our residents association, then yes, they can use our facilities, but otherwise not so much. Transportation, similar kind of thing. This they did, they cite RMAG, which was a committee back in 2009, which basically outlined all the things that, all the streets and sidewalks and transit and other kinds of transportation facilities that would be needed, as well as RA's own bicycle and pedestrian study, establishing where new trails may be needed or new links may be needed and other sorts of things like that. It did cite that, so it knows that what the problem is, and it used some of that in the RNAG in terms of looking at streets, hence the soapstone connection. And it has moderate TDM goals, and John Mooney, who I see in the back of the room, actually looked at that TDM process, and there's some questions about whether it's adequate to judge what we're trying to do. TDM means traffic demand management. We want to get people out of their cars, into transit, on the walking, biking, anything but cars. That's the whole goal of traffic demand management. And it calls the acceptable LOS for an urban area like Reston is, at least in the county's definition, is level E, which is the next to lowest level. Level F is gridlock. Level E is gridlock minus. Okay. So that's what the commitment is there. And there's not much ever. The RNAG effort, I can't really comment on the specifics of the street proposals. I don't know that there's anything bad about them. I don't know whether they're actually adequate. Well, actually, there's one thing that's bad. the street they added across Hidden Creek Country Club. But anyway, it was worked out basically with the developers, and there was a citizens half of that chaired by Andy Siegel, who's also here in the room, glad to see him. And it provided an advisory role as this process went forward. Yes, sir.
Jerry, stop.
This is regarding the parking bridge.
Excuse me, the people in the back can't hear anything that's being said up here. So can we hold the questions? We're almost finished with the, and then you'll be able to come to the mic and ask those?
Well,
because people in the back and on the tape can't hear anything. It's not an effective tape.
I will take this question and repeat it. Yes, sir.
Sure. A quick question on the park acreage. In the original Reston plan, was there what was the commitment that Reston made to park acreage? And was it based on population of Reston? As far as
well, first of all, I'm not specifically familiar with the original plan to comment on that. Oh, the question was, did the original plan make a commitment based on population to the acreage of parkland that we have? We do have 1,350 acres, and if Larry Butler's here, he can correct me, but I think that's right. So we do have that much, and so far as I know, that was established early on in terms of the acreage.
I'm just wondering, with all this development, we're still in line with the park acreage that you
I don't know whether we're in line with the early standards.
Not even close.
Okay. The key takeaway here is we've offered up these 10 proposals. There may be others which we want to hear from you when we get finished here. But it provides the best way of ensuring that we have a chance of getting population that's manageable and the infrastructure that we need to support that, whether it's schools or parks or whatever. And I hope you think about that, and if you've got ideas besides what you have to say tonight, if you want to send an email to me, Terrmayn, Terry Maynard, Terrmayn, at yahoo.com with your ideas in the next couple of days, I'd appreciate that. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Derek. We spent some time on this because there is a lot of work that's gone into this and a lot of statistics that we've generated to kind of make the point. But why we're here? Is that too much? Too loud? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm Dennis Hayes. I'm the president of the Reston Citizens Association. But the reason we're here is because we have a gut feeling that something has gone wrong in recent years, a gut feeling that that Reston that we know and we love is in danger at this point. And like many of you, for many years, I believe there was a plan, and I didn't really worry about it because I assumed somebody was out there doing something about it to keep the Reston that I moved here, and I've on 3 occasions come back to Reston deliberately because I believe in this community. Someone was looking after it. Well, no, it turns out not really, or not effectively, or not enough along the way. And so all of us are here because we feel that there's something that can be done and should be done. But all of you, I'm sure, growing up have heard the saying, you can't fight City Hall. Or in this case, you can't fight the Taj Mahal down there at where the government center is. Well, it turns out you can. You can fight City Hall. But it's not easy. It's not a one-time effort. It's not cheap. And it requires a constant vigilance at all times in order to preserve the things that we believe in. Now, as individuals, how much control do we have in changing the county's views and opinions? How much do we have? Basically nothing. Very, very little. As a single homeowners association, a smaller group or a cluster, how much influence do we have? Not much. A little bit more maybe, but nothing to speak of. Even as a medium-sized group, 50, 100 people, we don't really get much attention. But you put 900 people into South Lakes High, and all of a sudden, we get attention, and things start to happen. As Mao Zedong said, quantity has a quality all its own. And the thing that we can do as individuals is exactly this. We can come together, we can work together, and we can have an impact on how these things are going to play out in the long run. You know, I don't know that we could have done this a year or two ago. I have seen a very significant change in both the way I look at things and I think the way that our neighbors look at things. I see that we have had successes. The people at Rescue Reston, who've done just a phenomenal job at making sure that the National Golf Course stays a golf course. More recently, we have Reclaim Reston, Bruce and his folks who have worked with St. John's Wood and had tremendous success. And each of those led to something else, because now Rescue Reston has taken on Hidden Creek as a project to try to help folks there. Reclaim Reston has moved far beyond just St. John's Wood to Reston as a whole. And my organization, Reston Citizens Association, now increasingly looks at these issues from a community-wide perspective, not as this piece and that piece. You know, I live in North Reston, but what I've discovered is what happens in South Reston affects me. And I don't care where you live in Reston, something that happens anywhere else in our community is going to directly affect you. So we all need to stand together and work together, and I think we can do great things.
Dennis?
Yeah.
Can I give a shout out? Because I think Reston Association has lost 6 or 9 months. Has started to understand the need for their role in helping
Yes. Yeah, we work very closely with Reston Association. Barry, if you're still here, we do appreciate everything you and the other board members are doing. And all of this comes back to the concept that we talked about the last time we got together, which is one Reston. There's one Reston, not north, south, the TSA, all of these things. Everything is connected, everything is together, and if we can keep that in our mind, I think we have a chance to have some success. You know, now it's the kind of point of like, well, what can we do about this? I'll tell you the one thing that I think everyone in this room can and should do, and that is talk to your neighbors. You would not believe how many people in our community really have no clue that any of this is going on. We're all busy, we have families, we have jobs, we have things we have to do. It's Christmas. I mean, there's all of these things going on around us, and a lot of people just clearly have not yet focused. And I think with some focus, we can make it a 900 into 5,000 or so. And I guarantee you, we show up with 5,000 people with yellow shirts, and yes, I had to dig deep in the closet to find this one, but I did. Then we're going to have an impact as we go along here. Let me think, what else? We've talked about in previous meetings, I mean, it's important to communicate with our supervisor, and I will add an S to that, supervisors, not just ours, but go ahead and CC Chairman Bulapa and all the rest of them, because at the end of the day, all of them vote on these issues that we have here. There's some things that just drive me crazy. The road to nowhere, which was alluded to, where it goes through Hidden Creek. And again, it's not the fact that it's there. It's the fact that they think that nobody would notice that it was there. It's the fact that we have asked repeatedly for an explanation of how it got there, and we haven't gotten any. And these are the people that work for us. Rescue Reston, helping Terry here, has agreed to spend $237 for a Freedom of Information Act. Why do we have to pay to find out what it is that our county is doing to us? You know, shouldn't they just sort of tell us in the first place? And then we don't have to do these things. So, as you can see, I take these things personally. If you know me, you also know that I have a relatively short attention span. So at this point, we're going to try to move to some further questions and comments. And I'm going to ask you to bear with me because we do have limited time here. So I'm going to ask if you have a question, not a statement, but a question, and you can articulate it in 1 minute. Come on up now, and we'll get through those. After that, we'll move to other folks who might have a comment or a proposal or a suggestion for what we could add to the list that Terry did and these sorts of things. So I see you coming right on up, please, sir, and we will get going from there. But I am going to try to hold you to 1 minute as we get going, and then we'll try to get everybody in that needs to ask a question. Come on up here, where you can use the mic and everybody in the back can hear you. Thank you.
Good evening, folks. I'm Rob Whitfield, and I've been involved in Reston for the last 25 years. The Fairfax County Planning Commission recently, mid-November, approved a permitted use change for office buildings, existing office buildings, without the owners having to obtain a comprehensive plan amendment. This is probably a question for a land use lawyer like John in the back here. When is the county board going to consider implementing what was approved by the Planning Commission? By the way, they ignored exempting Reston, and the article didn't even appear in the Reston connection. I saw it in the McLean connection. And what analyses of traffic and other impacts have been done by the county and to consider the impacts on Reston of the changes in permitted uses for office buildings? I'll come back with other questions if there's time.
All right, is there an attorney in the house?
John.
Must be.
John McBride there?
Anybody know?
John, are you here? All right, we'll take that one under
I
advisement.
mean, the answer is this was done without the public.
That's why I asked the question.
I was hoping to get an answer. The bottom line is we need to have an understanding, because there's, 18, 20 million square feet of office space, and if in Reston.
No.
That's across the entirety of Northern Virginia, 20 million. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's 18 million in Reston.
Okay, Rob, thank you.
It's 120 million 116 million in Fairfax County.
Hello, my name is Dave Rogas. I live in Reston Town Center, and I actually have questions here. What is the current status, and excuse me for unknowing, of the Reston Town Center North plan, and what are our options for influencing it now?
Yeah, thank you. That's actually an excellent question. As all of you know, the Town Center North is basically the area that currently includes the library and the Rucker shelter there. Where it stands is there were proposals which were submitted. The date was October 24th, I believe. There were 5 companies who are bidding on this. I asked as recently as this past week if there was any news. I was told not yet. I have been told that each of the 5 developers' plans will be presented in a public forum for public comment. There's a more complicated answer to that I'd be happy afterwards, everyone who comes up and talk to me. But again, if you know me, I'm very active on the library side, and I have great concerns here because I keep hearing about an urban library, that we have to have an urban library. And the short answer of what is an urban library? It's a library that doesn't have parking spaces. That's what an urban library is. So we're going to try to work on that. But in general, we should, in the beginning of the year, be informed and have an opportunity to comment on. I know it directly affects you and your building, and so I think we need to be very, very alert to that. Oh, and let me, as long as I got the microphone, I get to say things. Again, this is the sort of thing. If you look last month's the supervisor's newsletter, if you scroll all the way down past all the announcements and everything, you come to a section called Land Use Applications. There were 22 separate land use applications, new ones, in last month's newsletter. Each of them, some of them going up into 1,500, 2,000 apartment sizes. So be aware of those, take a look at it, and obviously if we can get in on these issues sooner rather than later, we have a better ability to have an influence on what happens.
Related question, are there currently any height restrictions for these buildings in the plan, and is there any way to influence that?
The answer is no, the first part, and hopefully yes, because we're here tonight on the second part. Thank you.
What was the answer to this question about the status, and can we influence the North?
I'm told that community input will count for 30 points towards the eventual successor of which ones. I asked that question. I said 30 out of 100 or 30 out of 5,000. I've not gotten an answer yet.
That's an answer.
Please.
I have a question. Does Reston Association have any power or influence over the planning committee or Fairfax County? No.
Reston Association?
No.
No.
'Cause I went to the planning committee last Wednesday, and there were only a couple of people there on the building at 1800 Reston Parkway, where they wanted to go above and beyond what is allowed. And I think there was nobody there and nobody. So my proposal is, why don't we petition the legislature and become a town or city? That's, if we don't have any power, and we only need two things to do that, we have to petition the legislature.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, one that a couple of years ago I spent a lot of time working on. The short answer is the state government has done everything they can to prevent that from happening.
Cash cow.
Because we're a cash cow, exactly right.
But we can
And
still try.
there's some thoughts as to how we might improve our ability to have control over it, but it's a long process and will require a lot of patience and work. Sir?
One of my questions was already asked, but the other is, the 1989 plan had a cap of 78,000. Were any of the previous plans have a cap? Was that the only one with a cap?
I don't know.
It'd be worthwhile looking at.
There we go.
Because if they pulled it out after 78, then.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, please.
Hi, I'm Marilee Miller and I live in North Point area. And my question is this, my impression is that all of the land in Reston belongs to somebody. So I just find, how feasible is it that Fairfax County is going to be able to find some place to put parks and stuff unless Reston sells it undeveloped woods in the middle of nowhere? So I just wonder how feasible it is to find more land for parks here.
The key way that it's being, Tyson's Tyson's the plan actually specifically identifies two areas, one in the northeast of 20 acres, which is a big chunk of land, and one right on the southern boundary of Tyson's, which is basically a creek bed area as parkland. But more importantly, it calls on developers to proffer land for parks. They've already got an agreement of a proffer for a school. So it's the developers turning over parts of their land for some public use.
So you think that's going to be in Reston, it's going to be feasible for the developers to turn over part of their land to satisfy the Fairfax County park density, or how?
Yeah, you hit a key issue, is that is in the plan, and it is required, and as someone mentioned earlier, there are things in the plan that if they were implemented would make a lot of sense. My understanding, correct me Larry if you're here, there were at least 3 30-acre plots inside the TSA area, for instance, which could have had land that was devoted to use in the park, and that was what the plan was. The plan called for that. However, the developers decided they would rather build on that and not provide open space, and the county approved it. So, once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
It was there, and now it's gone.
Right, because I don't see any spare land anywhere.
Yep.
Thanks.
Well, just talking about, you put on top of elementary schools, you can put a playing field, or, you can turf it and light it so that people can play soccer at 4 in the morning. Yeah.
My name's Mary Fitzsimmons, and I'm going to raise the same issue that lady did. Look at Vienna. When they got a metro station in, did you see a bunch of high-rises? Look at Herndon. Do they have control? It's because they're a town. And you're right, I remember working on that several years ago, trying to get Reston a town. And what you got was, it's just another layer of taxation. However, I think if we bring it up now, people will see the value of a town. Yep. Now, I don't know legally how we do that. You folks probably know more about that. But I think it's worth trying, because what's come through in the last meeting and this one, we have no power. We need to have some footing to say, we don't want these. We will take some development because we're not, freaks who have to live in the past. But too much without infrastructure is wrong. So I will be glad to help to find out how we get to be a town status.
The frustrating thing is, again, my understanding is when Robert E. Simon acquired this land, he also acquired a charter for the town of Wheelie. and that about 15 or so years ago, one of our elected officials went and had that annulled and canceled without telling anybody. So it's gone.
Who was the official?
I don't want to say because I have not researched this myself, but I imagine there are people in this room who will be happy to tell you who is alleged to have done this. Think of a fruit. Yep.
So I'm Mike Kenworthy. I'm a firm believer that statistics are a liar's best tool. So I have 4 statistics that maybe you can reconcile for me. So I hear the cap, the current cap is or was 78,000, and that's I wanted to ask the question while the screen was up, but that's it. It said north, center, and south. I believe that. Okay. I also understand that the CPR now, we're looking at 120,000.
That's correct.
Yep. And then somewhere along the way, I thought it was slightly more, but I heard that the TSA is 90,000. So I do the math, and I add 120 to 90,000 and divide it by 78, and I don't get 2.
You're not doing it right.
Okay, I figured that.
Okay. The current plan, and if the and if the 16 persons per acre zoning ordinance went through, would allow about 180,000 people in Reston.
What's the 78,000?
That was in the 1989.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
That was what it was.
So now this is a new number. What's this new number you're telling me about? I haven't heard this number tonight.
Which number haven't you heard tonight?
Okay. Let me start again.
I got a whole bunch of numbers.
I wanted to ask when the numbers were up but they're gone now. What I understood was, in fact, in my historical documents, it was 58,000. The original Reston was 58,000.
Could have been. I don't know what originally.
Okay, so and it was up here just minutes ago, 78,000, and it said north, center, and south.
Yep.
Which I believe encompasses CPR, TSA.
No.
Village. No. Okay.
Because they didn't do it. They didn't do it this. They didn't cut the slices the same way they're cut today.
Well, let's go back.
The center one went all the way to the. There wasn't even a toll road then. It was just to the access road, and the south one went all the way north to the access road. So it included everything that's in the town center, and the area right along what's now the toll road. You may recall was called the Reston Center for Industry and Government. It allowed no housing at all. So there was no housing between Sunset Hills on the north and Sunrise Valley on the south.
I'm a simple guy, so I'm good with integer arithmetic. You drew a blue outline, right? I took that to be Reston.
Yep.
And in that blue outline, there were 78,000 inhabitants.
No.
No. Okay.
That was the plan cap.
Right.
In 1989. Now there are about the actual census estimate, as opposed to any county estimate, is about 62,000 people. The county counts 74,000 and change because they count housing they've approved but hasn't been built.
Okay. So again, let's start with that. So we're at 62,000, between 62 and 70,000 inhabitants today. Based on what I heard tonight, again, we're now going to expand that to 120,000 plus 90,000 if we're lucky.
No, to 120,000. That's all.
That's
CPR. One
CPR.
Reston. One Reston.
That's TSA and CPR.
Yes.
Okay.
That's our proposal.
I wish the writing was up on the screen because I read it several times and it said CPR only.
CPR is us, Coalition.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And we're
the blue outline encompassed TSA, CPR, village centers, and
CPR is not a physical entity. PRC. Okay. They overlap even. It's not. They're not separate entities.
Let's go. The blue outline. Statistics are
okay. Maybe we can take this one offline. I'm a liberal arts major. The math gives me a headache. So please come on up.
I'm June McGurn. I live in the Hemingway cluster, which is north of Wheelie, and I have what I hope are a couple of really quick questions. These are proposed master plan changes, they're recommendations, right, from CPR, and thank you all for having taken it this far. what's our next step on these recommendations? Is this small group supposed to vote tonight on, can somebody tell me what the process is?
I think what we are, first off, we wanted to kind of present this to the community, all the work that Terry and Tammy and others have done on this. The next thing we will do is write a letter to our supervisor, which will incorporate these. And again, if people have, Terry, I think, gave his email, if you have some other thoughts in there, we will incorporate that into the letter and formally present it to the supervisors along the way. And then, based on what Sherry had heard, that our supervisor is planning additional meetings, that, in our opinion, will be the topic of the discussion, is how do we move forward and get these amendments put into the comp plan to make it get back to the spirit that it was originally.
Okay. Then I have a specific question about the planning population growth. Number 3, limit village center residential development to 30 DUAs. Where did the figure 30 come from? Did it just sound like a good number?
It did sound like a good number, but it sounded like a good number because that's pretty typical of a garden apartment kind of complex density. It's not high-rise, and it's not townhouses. It's in between.
I'm just wondering because I know the North Point shopping center very well. I'm going to have to clearly go online to see the borders of what we're talking about when we say North Point Village Center.
The North Point is, someone else described, is a shopping center plus some residential behind it.
So,
it's nothing on this other side of the street, north or south.
So we're not considering that development of townhouses behind it to be its own development. We're considering that as part of North Point?
It is. We're not considering it. The county considers it as part of the village center.
Okay. All right. That eases my mind on that. My other quick question, is somebody, I think it may have been you, Terry, mentioned before that Baron Cameron Park was originally slated to be
The school property, yeah.
school. Is it possible, not that I want this to happen, mind you, is it possible that that might be converted back to use for as a school, or once it's designated park, does it stay park?
Well, no, anything can change. I mean, just in the last few years, besides that change, the Park Authority wanted to build a Reston Recreation Center there and chew up some ball fields. Instead, they swapped for land over in Town Center North, and now the Recreation Center will be at some point over in that area. So I can't say that it won't ever be, but I think we would be a great loss if we lost those ball fields. They could be improved, but...
The reference to building a middle school and a high school north of Baron Cameron kind of concerned me.
Well, I don't know of any place specifically to put it, quite frankly, but it...
Neither do I. But isn't that part of what we're recommending?
Yes, it is.
But we don't know where we're
County
going to put
can
it.
figure it out. Hey, they got someplace out near Innovation Center, so, they don't have a place in mind either.
Thank you.
Wasn't me. My name's Dave Settlemeyer, and I live in Lake Winds by Lake Thoreau. And I'm all for the idea of streets and roads and parks. But I don't know if we're focusing enough on the environmental impact of having all these people here. Additional people, additional traffic. Lake Thoreau gets its water from runoff from Soapstone, from the golf course, from Ridge Heights. And you put more traffic on these roads, the lake's going to be in worse condition. And I don't know whether there's any way of emphasizing that in the plan itself, because if everything stays the same except we add more people and more traffic, the environment's going to deteriorate. So.
Yeah, again, and that's an extremely important point, and it kind of gets to what our core concept is, which is that all of these things have to be considered at the same time. You cannot, the difficulty is a developer will come in and they have a specific program on a specific corner, and no one up until now has been focusing on what does that mean to everything that's around that and out. And so what I hope we can do, if you're asking me where do I see this movement going in a year or two, the first thing I think we want to do is we're not taken for granted and we're not ignored. And so when a developer comes forward, they're going to have to think about these things because they know if they don't, we're going to think about it for them and push it in there. So let's get to where they just do that, and then I think it works better all the way around for everybody.
I'll take a specific look at the Tyson's plan and what they have about environmental impact and restoration and the rest of that, and see if there's language there that we can use.
My name is Bruce Bennett. I actually live outside Reston, but Reston affects what happens to us outside. We're all part of a greater community. But before I start, I'd like to comment on Dennis and Bruce and Terry. They spend a lot of time working on this. They're working on your behalf. Don't forget to thank them, because I mean, it's a lot of work. My comment is this. We're being disenfranchised. It started in 2012 when I read a newspaper article which based from a very high official in this county, elected official, who said, I'm paraphrasing, we got to cut the citizens out of the process and let them make comments at the end of the process. And following that, a couple of years later, they developed a new plan process called Fairfax Forward. And they said that was to benefit the community. Well, we had a good process called APR, Area Plan Review, in which we all participated, everybody understood it, and it was a deliberative process. And what I mean by deliberative, I mean everybody had a chance to speak, people listened, and they evaluated it. So Fairfax Forward, they've changed the process somewhat, and they have a certain amount of administrative capabilities in the Fairfax Forward to administratively change things. And what they're doing is this is now a cancer coming into this process. It's an administrative process, and after Fairfax Forward, we had minor modifications, which is in the process now. Minor modifications gives them the capacity, them being the supervisors, the capacity to make changes administratively because they're minor. Well, that's just the nose under the tent of this process going to hell. We're being overrun by the process today, and I can tell you, unless we change our officials, we're going to be screwed over and over again. You got to make changes. You got to get together, work with them. You got to get in there, and you got to have a process change. You got to look them in the eye, and when they ask you for your comments, and they say, "Well, we heard them," you got to have a much stronger plan than that. You got to deliver letters. You got to sign these letters. You got to get 800 people out signing these things. We were successful over in my area, stopping a sewer that was going to come into the park administratively. Administratively. We had no say. They had 10 households, 20 people that signed a petition to move the sewer from their neighborhood to our neighborhood. It took us 700 signatures, approaching 1,000 signatures, and I mean a chaotic meeting when people were absolutely vulgar in their language for them to get their attention. They really don't have to do anything you say anymore. And unless we get that changed, it's going to continue. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Melanie Irons, and I bought my house in 1984. I've been here ever since. I think I'm up here really just to sort of, as an exclamation mark to my friend Amy when she was up here before. We went to the Planning Commission meeting the other night because we saw it on the Facebook, the Reston Citizens Association, so we thought, this is important, you know. You see those yellow, placards all over with a little tiny thing that nobody can ever, you're flying by at 40 miles an hour, nobody reads those, but thankfully you posted it. So we went, and I was a little disappointed because there were like myself, Amy, and my wife, and there were maybe 5 other people besides us there to represent. And Kate Hantley, is that her name? She was there, and she was against this thing that they were proposing. And what it was a 20-story building, and right at 1801 Old Reston Avenue. And they had these flashy attorneys that were spinning it like crazy, and And they could talk all they wanted, but the people that were there opposing this building being built, had a very strict limit. 3 minutes, bell goes off, go away. So, but Kate Hanley was there, and she was like, no, this is awful, and this is why. She had a great slideshow. It was terrific. But it was very short and truncated. And the thing was, we need to, these are small battles, but it's part of the war, and we have to, that will set a precedent. They deferred the decision to the end of January. And so it'll, I guess, be revisited. I don't know if they'll hear more arguments about it, but it's really important that we show up for this kind of thing. And because at one point, Kate turned around, she said, can we, I want to ask the people that are here opposing this to stand up. And us, 7 little people stood up and went, no. So it was kind of sad, but it was important that we were there. And I guess what I'm saying is we have to be there for the battles. And so when these things get posted, be there, show up. And,
Unfortunately, you're preaching to the choir.
Well,
you're absolutely right. And look, the thing to remember in all this is on the one side, you have full-time employed staff, you have lawyers, you have infinite financial resources. On the other side, there's us. And you have meetings that take place at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. You have others that take place at 9:30 at night on a Wednesday.
I think it's really awful, by the way. They do that on purpose.
I suspect so, yes.
Yeah, it's like, let's do this.
So the only thing I can say on this is look, the 3 organizations you see here, plus RA, we are always looking for folks who can help us out. We at RCA, we have a land use committee. We need people for that for exactly this reason. Because the few of us that are there can't go to everything. But if there's more of us, we can. We can cover every meeting. We can make sure that somebody is there because, as was said, stuff happens at these meetings. And my observation of the county, the way that they operate, is if nobody says no when they have these meetings, then that's it. That's full speed ahead. There is no second chance on that. If you can get even 4, 5, 6 people to stand up and say no, they tend to they'll defer action. They'll push it back a little bit, hoping that those folks will be busy the next time that they have a meeting. But then it's on us, if we had 6 the first time, to have 12 or 18 or 24 the next time after that. So please think about this, look at the different organizations, and if you can help out, we'd love to have you. Quick comment, and then we'll go here. Yes? I believe it was Reston Planning?
No.
It was Fairfax? It was the Fairfax County. Yep. Okay. Okay. Well, there'll be a new sheriff in town there shortly, right? Right. Okay, please.
Hi, my name's Kim Weibel. We've lived in our home in South Lakes since 1979. So we've been here a long time and seen a lot of changes. And first of all, I do want to reiterate what everybody else is feeling, how grateful we all are to all the work that you all have put in. And I completely endorse almost everything that you have said. The one question that I have is it possible, based on how other people feel, because this may just be my personal opinion and I don't want to force it on people, but I'm wondering if the thought can be slowed down just a little on the DUA of 30 in the village centers. And the reason that I'm saying that, the context I'm trying to put it in, is that I get that we have lost the transportation corridor. It is what it is. It's going to be what it's going to be. What I'm concerned about is what it's going to be like to live in the interior of Reston. Because we're already looking at, we're going to go to the library, there aren't going to be parking spaces, could be in a high-rise. We're going to go to our village centers, and you're going to go to an underground parking lot to get your thing of milk. So it's going to, and you're going to have a lot more traffic to fight to get there. So my concern is there a way to reconsider that DUA of 30 before you start sending it on to the supervisor at the village centers, if that's the will of the group, because I'm concerned about what that level of density is going to mean to all of our lives when our village centers become high rises.
Yeah.
It's not high-rises.
Well, okay, garden apartments, whatever, but you're still going to potentially be going to a village center where you're going to have a Safeway inside of a larger structure, not the ease that we can get to our village centers and park now.
What you've just described is quite possible, that it would be 2 or 3 stories of apartments above it, okay? And whether or not it would need an underground parking or would have a parking ramp, would be.
But again, that changes the character of how we live in Reston. Doing that changes the character. So getting it up to 30
There are going to be
worries
changes,
me.
obviously, with the station.
But how did that 30 number get pulled out of the hat? I mean, it was something that you
I
all.
pulled it out of my hat.
Okay.
I'm asking if it's possible, if other people feel the same way, for that to at least be considered as an issue to talk about in the group before it goes forward to Supervisor Hutchins.
Hang on, Chip, you have a comment on that?
Well, what's the DUA now at North Point? Because there's housing there and there's.
It's very low. I don't have the number in front of me.
That is a guideline.
Well, what you're saying is not to allow any development, and that's just not going to happen. I mean, even I'm realistic enough to know that, and we need to allow some expansion of housing and hopefully also retail at these places. Oh, at Lake Ann? Well, I'll tell you what the difference is.
North Point.
Well, Lake Ann, as a plan, has 36, which is more than we're proposing, 36 dwelling units per acre in its plan. What now stands, if it stays standing, and people come in with a high-density sort of proposal, now, in fact, in that table that I showed in my presentation, all the other ones are looking at over 60 dwelling units per acre. So what I'm saying is 30 seems to be a good number based on what the county will expect and accept.
Okay.
Well, you do the acreage on these things because, from my perspective, North Point is a tiny little area, and Lake Ann
It
and
is small.
Hunter's Woods are big. So, we need to know the acreage on these various centers and their current density.
All the numbers I've given you are by acre. So the big ones like Hunter's Woods
The existing.
and Lake Ann.
Yes. Well, I want to know what the so-called hot centers, acreages and their.
Yeah, I think in the comp plan, the whole expanded one, and granted, it's 180 something pages, but they have detailed maps of these areas and acreages and all that. So I think we're on that. My personal view is as soon as self-driving cars come in, the metro will be turned into a rails to trail, and you'll be able to bike ride to Tyson's on a Sunday afternoon and an elevated highway, and it'll be nice. But I take your point. We have to look at all of how, again, it's how everything affects everything.
Live in the interior
Correct.
of Reston, because
Yep.
that is what you're describing, even at a DUA of 30, is
Yep.
going to drastically change
Change
what
things.
it's going to be like to live inside of Reston.
Yeah, okay, yeah, good, please.
Hi, my name is Jody Bennett, and I would ask, but I won't. How many of you get Kathy Hudgens newsletter?
Go to the mic.
Oh, hi, my name is Jody Bennett, and I would,
Use that one, I think this one might be dead.
okay, I would ask, how many of you get Kathy Hudgens newsletter? Okay, that is wonderful. But if I ask that question again, I would like to see every hand come up. And the reason I'm suggesting you do this, Kathy puts in her newsletter a lot of information about applications on target, applications being approved, and et cetera. You need to look what's coming down the pike. So if each of you who do not subscribe to hers, write her an email and say, hey, I'm really interested about this density that's been proposed. I want to get on your list because I'm concerned with all of these applications that are being approved. They're going to get ahead of you in terms of the 30. So I would encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Good.
You have to subscribe to it?
Yeah, on that, Just go to fairfaxcounty.gov, I think you can just sign up for it. You know, one point that sort of came up in Terry's comments, it's worth noting, and where it goes back to where we all started from, which is on the density issue, 13 verse 16, is if you look at, say, Spectrum Center, they have an approved plan for however many, 1,440 units. If the density is increased, there's nothing that prevents them from going back and requesting a higher limit. So instead of 1,400, it could be 1,800 or 2,400 or whatever along the way.
Several people have asked, how can they get the email address for Kathy Hudgens? fairfaxcounty.gov. Then you'll come to a screen and it will have Board of Supervisors. Click on that and it will have them all there. And Tammy, maybe you can help circulate that some way, because she needs to hear from us that we're concerned about all those applications that she's approving.
Yeah, good. Yes.
Speaking of 12 to 16, what are we proposing?
As far as I'm concerned, 13 is a nice number, and it's been there for a long time, and there's no reason to change it. So, yeah, please, come on up. John, I know you got something too. Come on up around here. Oh, okay, all right.
I'm Bob Anthony. I live in Weathersfield Cluster, which is just about ready to get a Kensington senior citizen facility built that's equivalent to the length of 17 townhouses, you know, within 100 feet of some of our fellow residents. And it just cheek to jowl fills a lot in a convenience center.
Right.
And, you know, this is not typically your 7-Eleven or right now it's a preschool. What I'm asking is, I'm hearing a lot of information overload. There are so many things happening and there are so many moving parts. You know, one would hope that government worked for us rather than government working to try to figure out how to squeeze the last nickel out of some piece of property. And I'm trying to, I guess the thought I'm trying to get to is, how do we organize the way we communicate to ourselves so we can see what the really highlight issues are, how we can organize in a way so that we can show up in mass when we need to, and sort of break up the task into parts, and also institutionalize part of this so that our elected officials know that they're being held accountable. Because unless we can communicate efficiently, we'll all drown in this information. And we can't be effective.
Yeah.
So
No, that's an excellent point.
That's a main point to me.
That's a main point to me, because we are 10 or 12 groups that speak to various people, but who speaks to all the people? And as far as I know, RA is that, or should be, the entity that talks to everyone, not the gray-haired people that are inside the room here tonight, but the millennials that are out there taking care of their kids and trying to keep their jobs in Reston. But these people, they do care when they're pinned down. They do care about these things. It's just that when you're fractured, it's not getting to everyone.
Yeah, again, John, good point. I would say again, what's different now from then is that you see three groups. I see Connie over there. I see RA, Sherry. I see all these folks that last couple of years, we've all worked on our individual projects, and now we're all working together. And that's the only way we're going to survive, is if we all work together. Because what happens to the golf course affects me. It affects you. It affects everybody. Bruce, you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to emphasize that clearly there's a lot of frustration with what's happening in Reston. There's no question, all of us, when it gets close to us in particular, it's very painful to see the change to a really wonderful planned community. Tonight, though, the focus has to be on amending the master plan. The heart of a lot of these issues is with the master plan, because it is being used to shove all these projects that we're concerned with. So this is a root cause analysis. The root cause for the moment, there's a lot to do. There's a lot of things we could do, but the thing that we have to do is to get some control. Just some. The beginning place is the master plan. So what we've talked to tonight is some recommendations. There are good suggestions that we've heard tonight. There are concerns that we've heard tonight. Send those to, you got the email, you'll get another message from Reclaim Reston offering other communication means so that you have an easy way you'll hear from us with links to whoever you want to send this in. I don't care if it comes to any one of these organizations. That's why we formed a coalition, so we're working together. But the point is, let's focus on the amendments that we can put forward to the master plan. Let's talk about then how we present them to our officials, and then let's talk about how the community gets its voice heard loudly by those officials.
Thank you, Bruce. Exactly. Okay, listen, we're an on-time airline. I promised John. Come on up and do that. If anybody has anything else they need to talk to any of us, come on up after we break up, and until they throw us out, we'll be happy to answer questions. John?
Yeah, my name is John Nussbaum, and I'm a 30-year resident of Reston. Seen a lot of things come and go, and I, like everybody else here, have a feeling that the word is getting out into this room, but not getting out beyond this room very well. One thing I wanted to bring to your attention is the amount of green space that we have. Just speaking of the green space that's been saved and the green space that's being threatened. The National Golf Course, the efforts, it's at Lake Fairfax Park, Hidden Creek Golf Course, Walker Nature Center, Barron Cameron Park, and the Meadows, and 55 miles of paved trails that run all over creation in Reston, and the value that had. Now think about this just for a minute. I was making grapevine wreaths to give away as presents over at Lake Fairfax. I got permission to do this sort of thing. And I run into a guy, and he brought this phrase to my attention: ecotherapy. Has anybody ever heard of ecotherapy? Well, a light bulb went on in my mind that this is an area where Reston really excels, because they're not the people that are coming home from the war, but people that are stressed out, that are burned out, that need something as simple as a walk in the park or just to sit on a bench. It can make the difference in how their life goes on. And the fact that people live in places where they're just canyons like Roslyn, they're stressed out. They don't have the luxury that we've got, and that's the reason I would like to propose that Reston become a eco-friendly community. Like to be a town, but an eco-friendly community where these principles are adhered to, and these things are revered, and people that across the United States that call Reston a wonderful place to live want to come here and live. And that's the most important thing to me, is look it up, learn about it, and find out that just something as simple, not playing soccer, but something as simple as a walk in the park can make a big difference in Reston.
Thank you. Good job, John. Thank you. Fully agree. All right, thank you one and all for coming. I really appreciate it. And again, quantity has a quality all its own. So we will only have an impact if we all stand together. Thank you.